So, hey guys, today we're going to be talking about uh, AI and Yu-Gi-Oh! So, right now, I think the AI for the solo mode is kind of just bad. The only one that's kind of aggressive and doesn't, I guess, give up would be the Danger Dark World one. So, for example, if I were to control, let's say, a Jinzo, a lot of the AIs will simply give up simply because Jinzo big, my guy smaller than Jinzo, so they would summon all of their guys technically into the defense position, face down defense, normal summon set. But maybe they actually have some kind of link play or that they could do to go like full combo, but they just don't do it because I control like a sizable guy. Like I could control Blue Eyes White Dragon and it probably would do the same, and that's kind of goofy. But in terms of AI, how strong can AI be in, I guess, Master Duel? Well, it's surprisingly pretty damn good. Well, it could be. So if we're talking a bit about the theoreticals, well, AIs right now, not that good. Just if we're talking about like AIs in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh, right? But the potential is there because the biggest thing that restricts an AI is well, stuff like possibilities and also optimal play, right? So if optimal play were to, for example, not exist or the line to win doesn't really exist, then, well, there are no options for your AI to, I guess, choose between. But in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh, there genuinely always is a completely 100% optimal play that, well, from any angle. So, uh, yeah, that's basically not achievable by humans and not achievable by a normal AI either. So the easiest way to accomplish this is to have a cheating AI, essentially. So if I were to, for example, only be able to see my hand, so let's just make a quick hand. So let's assume, I don't know, maybe I have this, and then we have Called by the Grave, and then I don't know. Let's say, sure, Ash Blossom, Three Cracked Hand, I suppose. Something like this. So this is my 5-card hand. So the optimal play varies depending on exactly what your opponent has. So for example, if I do normal summon Rosin, this might be suboptimal if my opponent has specifically infinite impermanence and they have like mind reading abilities and they're able to tell you don't have a Vanquished Soul that can tag out with Rosin. Or maybe they imperm like the Xiaolong, or they imperm the Link 1. There's probably a line that plays around all of that if you're looking for specifically imperm, but the thing is, does my opponent actually have infinite impermanence? Is my opponent actually hiding their chain links so they actually do have impermanence even when I'm trying to check for imperm through various means, right? It is very not clear. And maybe my opponent actually has Ash Blossom Pure Spring, which I could bait by activating Stake Your Soul because, well, yeah, Stake Your Soul resolving doesn't really matter in this hand. And I have Called by the Grave here for a, I don't know, maybe I want Called by something else and not Ash Blossom Pure Spring. So maybe my opponent can actually, if they're able to, well, maybe my opponent has a hand where they have like Ash Blossom and Maxi, where if we were to Called by the Ash Blossom, then we could get hit by something like a Maxi or some other hand trap that goes to the graveyard. So a lot of things could happen here, but you know what else could happen? We could completely cheat and we could know the entirety of our opponent's extra deck, so we know exactly what our opponent's game plan is if we see like essentially their whole deck list. So yep, the entirety of their extra deck, and then their main deck and their hand. Then we know exactly what to do, and we even know their top deck for the turn, so we know their plays next turn as well. and that's about as disgusting as it can get. And well, a normal AI wouldn't be able to do this, but if Konami specifically made an AI, they could have an AI this disgusting, able to look at, for example, your opponent's, well, assuming this is like the AI's hand, right? They could know exactly what top decks uh, and cards in hand, allowing you to make the absolute optimal play, no questions asked. Because that you can just play around literally everything your opponent can do before they even have the chance to do it, which is pretty wild, I guess. And sometimes, you just lose the game because you get sacked, maybe you get an unlucky hand, nothing you can really do about that, unless you also rig the hands as well. So you just always generate good hands, which is just also another level of just messed up. But yeah, you could technically do that, I suppose, as well, to make the AI even more disgusting. But if we're just assuming gameplay, right? The optimal plays are achievable. Well, the first step would be to have information to make your plays, and that's very crucial. And then being able to make the plays and sequence everything correctly, that is like an entirely different beast. So uh, maybe you can make an oversight as a human, or maybe the program has an oversight as well. So that's also potentially an issue. But I mean, given enough time, I think that's solvable, at least, right? So worst case scenario, I suppose. Uh, well, best case scenario, actually, we could have a completely insane AI that is completely able to play optimally with, well, whatever deck we give them. So the issue, I suppose, after this is how many different cards interact, the AI being able to understand the interactions and being able to play around them properly, like damage step stuff. Like sometimes because uh, this thing is damage step, like Chundra, you don't hold Ash Blossom for Chundra, you just drop it the moment you can against Tenpai because there's just genuinely nothing you can do if you let, well, the card resolve. So for example, if you let Pydra search Kaiman, you might not be able to Ash Kaiman if your opponent makes the Synchro 10 then, or the Synchro 7 that prevents monsters from being activated in the battle phase. So then you wouldn't be able to do anything there. So yeah, that those interactions are very, very complicated. So the only time I could technically somewhat consistently figure out the optimal plays is if I gave it some actual thought and actually if I was just like reviewing the game. That's about it, right? Because the game is unironically just fairly complex. Yeah. So there are little things like attack defense position, and then there's also the position of your cards on the field and how you set your cards where you summon to, like zone positions and all that. All of that can actually be a game losing play depending on exactly what your opponent has, what they do. So this one game, for example, because I summoned my monster into attack position, I believe I got like run over by Numeron Dragon. But because of the cards I had, um, I would have been fine if that one monster was in defense position. I would live that turn, and then just by looking at the cards I currently had in hand and whatnot, I would have actually won the game if my guy was in defense, right? And then there was this other time where I put Baron the floor into, I think, attack position, and then I got hit by a lightning storm, and I had to negate it with Baron or let Baron be destroyed, and that was essentially game losing, and I could have entirely avoided that by having Baron in defense. But this other game, my opponent, they special summoned, I don't remember what it was, I think it was something like a unicorn. It was like some guy about as big as unicorn that ran over my Baron in this other game, and then my Baron was destroyed by battle, and I lost the game because of that instead, which is just like, bruh, never lucky. So if they had Fenrir instead, for example, in that case, I would have been fine because I'm pretty sure I impermed whatever Kishtira they special summoned, right? But you know, special summon Fenrir 2.4k into 2.4k defense. That neither would be destroyed, right? So yeah, that was painful in general. Or maybe they had rates off plus Fenrir, which wouldn't have beaten over Baron. I don't remember the exact situation. I just remember that the the Baron lost me the game because of like a subtle thing. And technically, I mean, if your AI cheats hard enough, you would be able to tell. Hmm, I should put Baron in attack in this position on this part of the field in particular. And I can put it here because, you know, it's better. So one card that is just really dumb to play around, I guess, would be Longirsu. So the thing about Longirsu is the zones this guy points to, so Longirsu. This is actually um every single like other zone. This is like every single safe zone that plays around essentially I guess yeah, every single safe zone in your main monster zones is not a safe zone against Longirsu. So for example, against Geonator Transverser, you would want to play into the Anima zones potentially and the Longirsu zone. So the Longirsu points to the left. Geonator should point to the right. Yeah. So if you want to play around Geonator, you would summon in the middle zone or the zone uh, to the right because the board is kind of flipped. Link arrows, I guess. So yeah, so essentially though, the Geonator zones right here, the link arrows, the ones that are blacked out there are lit up on Longirsu. So if you're playing around Geonator, you're absolutely not playing around Longirsu. If you're playing around Longirsu, you're actually not playing against Geonator Transverser. So technically, your opponent could summon like one of these guys, and potentially it could be a game determinative. I'm struggling today. So it could be game determinative, and you, you would lose the game because you summoned to your one of your cards to one of these zones, right? And there's only one safe zone against Longirsu, I guess, being specifically um, all the way to the left or all the way to the right, depending on your perspective. It's kind of trippy, but yeah. So let me think for a second. The safe zone for Geonator is the right, so it would be the left. The leftmost zone is the Longirsu safe one. So yeah, if you could see essentially your opponent's extra deck, you'd be able to tell. I'll just place my guy on the leftmost zone, like this guy, specifically this guy, because I don't want it to be non-targeting sent by Longirsu. And then you would be fine in general, I suppose. But then, I mean, technically, if your opponent is playing, I believe. Let's check real quick. Yep. If your opponent's playing both Geonator and Longirsu, Geonator could actually technically, I guess, cover up the Longirsu's blind spot. You'd summon Geonator pointing to a guy, then summon Longirsu to send. Which would be, I mean, pretty psychotic if you could pull that off. But yeah, it works, I suppose. So, I mean, all of these subtle things for an AI to, like, understand that, I think that would be biggest hurdle. Aside from, like, being able to understand information, we would need the AI to be able to kind of execute the optimal plays with this information, which I mean, with enough trial and error, I think technically I'd say plausible or very possible. I don't see a reason why it would not be possible. It's just a lot of effort. If you were to either manually program or just to do it through like AI learning, I'm not really sure if AI learning is the right play for this, or if you should just brute force code like every single like interaction and also like kind of build around that, I guess. Like for certain decks, Ash Blossom Joe Spring, there are certain decks where it's better to Ash Blossom at different points. And it situationally changes when you would like Imperm or Ash. So one such deck would be Yubel. So if we were against Yubel, the best point you can imperm changes depending on the hand. So if my opponent only has D Lotus, then just imperm D Lotus, simple as that. But if your opponent has Nightmare Pain, uh, and or maybe like something like a Gruesome Grave Squirmer already, imperming onto the Spirit of Yubel would not be good. And imperming on the Spirit of Yubel is better, in which case your opponent has maybe a Nightmare Throne or opening of the Spirit Gates, which completely ignores imperm on D-Lotus because D-Lotus sends for cost. So it's a card you have to imperm before it activates. And depending on this, I guess, it could be better or worse. And if your opponent has absolutely no choke points for Imperm, the best thing you can do with Imperm in this case is just to wait for your turn and then just use it in that case. Like maybe Imperm Vardris or Imperm Apollosa, I guess. Which is impossible to accurately do unless you're basically cheating and you know exactly what your opponent has. So yeah, the best AI is a cheating one, I suppose. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.